Welcome to today's lesson. Today we will be learning about ancient tombs of the Western world. During our lesson today, we will be answering these questions about ancient tombs. Why did tombs change? Why did some cultures have different tombs? And how did tombs change? Ancient cultures each had their own special way to bury their dead. Tombs and graves were different in each culture because of their beliefs about death and the afterlife. Archaeologists and historians study burials and tombs, the artifacts inside them, as well as their construction, to learn more about the cultures that created them. Cultures changed the way they buried their dead when their beliefs changed, so each ancient culture buried their dead in many different ways throughout time. Today we will be discussing some of the coolest tombs created by the Mycenaeans, Greeks, Etruscans, Romans, and Egyptians. What is the difference between a grave and a tomb? Before we begin learning about different tombs and graves, let's talk about the difference between them, because they are not the same. A grave is a hole dug in the ground where the body is placed. A tomb can be one or more rooms, and they can be found above or below ground. Tombs can be very large or quite small. What are grave goods? They are anything that the culture believed was important for the dead to have in the afterlife or was something special to the person. Archaeologists and historians study grave goods to help them understand the people who were buried there and the culture they belonged to. While grave goods are exceedingly interesting, our focus today will be on the types of tombs different cultures used. Let's get started by looking at the most famous tombs of all, the Egyptian pyramids. When anyone thinks of the Egyptians, they think of the pyramids. These structures were the grand burial tombs of the ancient Egyptian rulers called the pharaohs. Pyramids are triangular-shaped buildings built above the ground, and it is believed that their shape refers to the sun. They can be many different sizes. Burial chambers can be found within the pyramid or below it. Along with the mummified body of the pharaoh, the chambers may have also been filled with luxurious grave goods. Step pyramids were the first pyramids used as tombs in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh Zosir's pyramid was built during the 3rd dynasty, which was almost 5,000 years ago. Step pyramids were used as tombs for Egyptian royalty. Within step pyramids, like this one in Saqqara, the burial chamber is underneath the pyramid and is made of limestone. Step pyramids replaced mastabas. What is a mastaba? A mastaba is a rectangular building made from mud bricks, and it was the grand entrance to the chamber tomb below. Once the step pyramid of Zosir was created, mastabas were no longer used for the elite, but were used for the burial of wealthy Egyptians. Each pyramid built by the pharaohs was different, as they each designed them differently, and wanted them to be more impressive than the pharaoh before them. The pyramids of Giza are the most famous Egyptian pyramids. The largest pyramid is called the Great Pyramid of Giza and is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Great Pyramid belonged to the pharaoh Khufu and was built around 2600 BCE, which was about 4,000 years ago. The pyramid was built with millions of blocks of limestone. Archaeologists believe that when it was first built, the pyramid would have been covered in bright white limestone, and the tip of the pyramid was covered in gold. The pharaoh's mummified remains were buried in a room within the pyramid, but you could only get to it by climbing down a shaft that you would enter 49 feet up the side of the pyramid. Now let's look at the Tholos tombs of the Mycenaean people of ancient Greece. The Mycenaeans lived during the Bronze Age, which was about 1600 to 1075 BCE, which was around 4,000 years ago. The Mycenaeans had a large palace complex at the city of Mycenae, where these tombs can be found today. Tholos tombs are very large, rounded tombs, and they have been nicknamed beehive tombs because the shape of the main room looks a lot like a beehive. These tombs are considered chamber tombs because they have multiple chambers where the dead and their grave goods were held. Tholos tombs were burials for the most important people in Mycenaean society, like kings, queens, and warriors. Because the tombs were used for the most important people within Mycenaean society, many expensive and impressive items were found within these tombs. These large tombs were a symbol of power and wealth. What other types of graves can be found in Greece besides the Grand Tholos tomb? A more common type of grave was the Cyst grave. Cyst graves were rectangular holes dug into the ground and lined with stone slabs with a large flat stone placed on top. Most of the time, only one person was placed in the grave. Cyst graves were often found in the late Bronze Age, about 4,000 years ago. However, many other cultures use them as well. Cyst graves can be found throughout Greece, and many can still be seen today in Athens' Kerameikos Cemetery. During the classical period of ancient Greece, which ran from roughly 480 to 323 BCE, about 2,500 years ago, Greeks would wrap the bodies of the dead in white cloth and lower them into a cyst grave. This is called inhumation. Although not as common during the classical period, the Greeks still did cremate their dead and place the ashes in an urn. If the family of the dead could afford it, sculptures or grave steles were placed next to the grave as a marker, like this image here. What is a stele? A stele is a picture carved into the stone. Etruscans lived in Etruria, which is located in central Italy. Archaeologists believe they may have lived between the 700s BCE and the 300s BCE, almost 3,000 years ago. Tumulus tombs were cut into the bedrock, which was the rock below the surface, but they could also be made of cut stone blocks. Interestingly, these tombs resemble the Mycenaean Tholos tomb and have a similar beehive shape. The inside of these tombs were sometimes carved to look like houses, with beds for the deceased's body to rest. Dirt was piled on top of the tomb to make it look more impressive. Roman culture began in Italy alongside Etruscan culture. Romans and Etruscans were neighbors, in fact. The Romans were very strict about their tombs. They were not allowed to bury anyone within the walls of the city, but built tombs along the roads leading out of the city. The tombs were often house-shaped and were made of brick and stone. Only the wealthiest people were able to afford to have large house tombs. The cremated remains of the dead would be placed in an urn and then placed in the family tomb. Tombs like this became popular in the 1st century CE, about 2,000 years ago. Romans began burying their dead in sarcophagi in the late 2nd century CE. A sarcophagus was essentially a stone coffin and could be elaborately carved like the one you see here. The tombs were often marked with an inscribed stele, where you would read about the people in the tomb. Inscriptions can be found on the front of tombs, which describe those who have been placed within it. If the family of the dead could afford it, an image of those who had passed away would be carved in the stele. What is an inscription? They are words carved into stone that give you information. Don't forget, burials within tombs and graves provide tons of information for archaeologists and historians about different cultures. Cultures buried their dead in different ways because each culture had different beliefs about death and the afterlife. These practices changed over time. The most impressive graves and tombs belong to the most important people in society, like kings, queens, and warriors. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out the other videos featured as part of the Museum of Antiquities Ancient and Medieval Adventures Online.